100,000 British tourists come to Sri Lanka on holiday every year. But on the beaches, what you can't see is a country that's turned into a military state. A country where there's disturbing evidence that the security forces are involved in torture, disappearances and murder. We were with the Sri Lankan army on the front line of their conflict with the rebel Tamil Tigers. After a huge suicide attack targeting the Secretary of Defence, Sri Lanka's new government vowed to destroy the rebels militarily.
When you're travelling on one of these, you feel very exposed. So many soldiers have been killed by claymore mine attacks or ambushed by the Tamil Tigers. It's a real risk. And by being here, we feel what it's like to be in the shoes of a Sri Lankan soldier.
They'd taken this Tamil Tiger naval base in Mannar in the north of the country 3 weeks earlier. The fighting had been ferocious.
Look carefully, you start to see things, a gun pit over there, down here an underground bunker. You see some drips hanging from the trees. So according to the officers, this could have been a medical base for the Tigers.
The army told us they'd killed 11 guerrillas in the battle.
Major, this is what? From shelling? Lieutenant?
Air bombing.
Air bombing?
Yeah.
Wow, look at that. All of the civilians who lived in this area have had to flee. They're homeless, they're refugees. Now, the army's justification for the combat is they have to rout the Tamil Tiger rebels out of here.
But in 24 years of conflict, 70,000 people have died, and peace has never seemed so remote. When civilians die, each side blames the other. The local priest had just buried 12 of his parishioners. Their bus was blown up as they fled the fighting. 3 were children, 6 were women.
There are many killings are taking place without investigation and buried and gone. So that's not the normal thing here. For each and every killing, some investigation.
That's not normal?
No, it's not normal.
Why not?
Because the country has come to such a situation that killing has been taking place every other day. And there's no one responsible and no one can do in this situation.
We heard that the mother of one of the children buried here had survived. She was in the local hospital and we went to find her.
What else was injured? Your leg? Your face?
The doctors didn't know if Bharati would ever walk again. She said she and her children had left their house because of the shelling that was going on all around them.
Bharati says that she was on the bus. Next thing there was a blast. Suddenly they were all over the place. They were all outside lying on the ground. She looked around, she survived. She looked at her son, he had survived. Around her, most of the other people were dead. She lost her mother, she lost her daughter.
Her daughter, Suveta, was just 4.
As she was talking to me, that was a huge shell sound we heard, probably been sent into the Tamil Tiger area. Was that what it was like in your village? You could hear shells like that all the time? Oh!
No one knows for certain who was responsible for the blast.
This is the plight of so many people living in this part of the country where they're caught in the middle of the two sides and there's nowhere to go.
We went to the local cathedral. We heard all kinds of atrocities are happening here. Not just killings in crossfire, but murders by death squads looking for anyone connected to the Tamil Tigers, or the LTTE as they're known. The Bishop of Mannar wanted to speak out. He said the government attempts to blame the Tamil Tigers for the death squads didn't add up.
People are being killed by some other party. We don't know who the party is, but LTTE is not here to do that. So people are talking.
He suspected the security forces were behind many killings.
They fired.
He wanted to show us the photographs of one of the worst atrocities.
The bishop has given me photographs of the massacre. This is the mother of the family. Her throat was slit. The father of the family has been hanged. He's been disemboweled. The next picture is difficult to describe. It's two little children hanging from nooses around their necks. It's a young girl, very small, slender, short hair. Her body is covered in blood. Her little white dress is all covered in blood. There's blood on her elbow. Her head is bent over sideways. A yellow rope is what was used to hang her. Her eyes are still open. Her brother is behind her. The little boy has been disemboweled.
The bishop knows he is treading a fine line by condemning war crimes. The day after we left Mannar, one of the priests was killed in an ambush. The army blames the Tigers. The Tigers blame the army. Death squads operate all along the front line that divides the north of Sri Lanka from the south.
We're heading to the east of the country to a part that used to be controlled by the Tamil Tigers. A few months ago, after fierce fighting, the army routed the Tigers from here, and the government says that they have won this area back. But the killings still go on. There's still tens of thousands of displaced civilians. We hear that there are death squads roaming around the region. The biggest problem, according to aid workers we've spoken to off the record, is that none of the people around here are likely to speak to us because they're all too scared.
We arrived in Batticaloa, another Tamil area. The security forces say they took complete control of this region in July. They were helped by this man, Colonel Karuna, the commander of the Tamil Tigers in the east. He and his men broke away from the Tamil Tiger leadership 2 years ago. 315,000 Sri Lankans have been displaced by this round of fighting. Outside the town, we found 2 refugee camps run by the UN. We were told that in the 7 months since the fighting escalated, some refugees suspected of having links with the Tamil Tigers have simply disappeared.
How long have you been here?
People told me they were terrified of being abducted by Colonel Karuna's gunmen, who they said were collaborating with the security forces.
There's a real sense here that nobody will speak what's on their mind, that the people are afraid. Once you start talking to somebody, a crowd gathers. After a while, a couple of men will come, stand at the back of the crowd. The person you're interviewing will clam up. And we've heard off the record from some of the people who live in the camps that Karuna members are coming and going day and night.
One woman was brave enough to talk to us.
Tirumala is crying because she said she's lost everything. They worked really hard for everything they had in life. Now her house is partially destroyed. They're hearing rumours of looting in their areas. They can't go there and see. She says she'll never be able to earn enough money again to replace what she's lost. And she still has absolutely no idea if she'll ever go back to her home again.
Before we could ask her anything else, our fixer told us that spies had arrived.
We have to go.
We need to stop first.
Okay, yeah.
We had to end the interview immediately. At the neighbouring camp, we were told our presence was endangering the refugees.
This man, the refugee leader, is concerned that some men have arrived to watch his movements, to listen to him, so time to get out.
We checked in with the local security forces, in this case the police special task force that controls the area. The commander suggested we go on a hearts and minds exercise in a village that had until recently been under Tiger control. We went to the Hindu temple in Kokudicholai village. A large annual festival was taking place. The police were attending the ceremony and paying for a special lunch.
Soldiers are moving up.
This area had been under Tiger control for 13 years. People had to obey the Tigers' orders, and even civilians were forced to do arms training. The security forces fear that some of these locals could still be Tiger sympathisers.
We've been discreetly talking to the local people. Nobody wants to go on camera in front of the Special Task Force, but what we're hearing is that people are very uncomfortable with the idea of soldiers coming to their place of worship.
Human Rights Watch has accused the security forces in the East of carrying out enforced disappearances and serious human rights violations.
Hello, thank you.
Away from the police, one woman agreed to meet us, provided we hid her identity. Her husband had been abducted 5 months ago.
She said she believes it had to be the Special Task Force who abducted her husband because they live in between two Special Task Force camps and it couldn't have been anybody else, she claims.
She said her husband had made the mistake of telling the police that when the Tamil Tigers had controlled the area, he'd been forced to do weapons training. Witnesses last saw him being taken to the Special Task Force camp.
She said she went to one Special Task Force camp to ask for information about her husband. They're so angry, they're so sick of the sight of her, they chased her down the road.
She told me she'd lost everything.
She says she wishes that the Special Task Force would just tell her the truth, because if she knew her husband was dead, she could give her children away and then she could kill herself.
Everyone was telling us that the Karuna group, the breakaway Tamil Tigers, and the security forces were collaborating against their common enemy, the main Tamil Tiger leadership. We went to meet Arthurai Retnam, a Tamil politician who'd been threatened ahead of upcoming elections.
He said a month ago, Karuna ordered his execution.
இப்போதான் கர்நாடகா குரூப் ஆக்டிவிட்டி கவர்மெண்ட்டுக்கு தேவை. கண்ட்ரோல் பண்ணிட்டாங்க. ஏரியா கண்ட்ரோல் கொண்டு வந்தா சிவில் ஆட்களுக்குள்ள ஆர் எல்டிடி அண்ட் ஐலண்ட்.
He said now that the government is taking control of the area, they need the Karuna men more than ever to be in the bases, in the former Tiger strongholds, so they can identify people who may have been soldiers for the Tamil Tigers or their sympathisers.
கர்நாடகா குரூப்
He said the Karuna group commit all sorts of human rights violations, including recruiting child soldiers. But because the government still needs the group, they turn a blind eye to their activities. We wanted to speak to the Karuna group, but they declined our request for an interview. We went to Colombo, the capital. It's 8 hours drive from the front line, but we'd heard hundreds of Tamils had been arrested. Hundreds more have simply disappeared. We kept a low profile as we went to meet a Tamil MP and human rights investigator. Abduction is the most sensitive subject in Sri Lanka, one the government doesn't want explored.
Hi, how are you?
Hello. Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Ganeshan. Hi.
Every day Mano Ganeshan is besieged by the relatives of the disappeared.
There are so many cases, hundreds of cases.
How many in the whole of Sri Lanka?
It's about 2,500 men and women have gone missing in the last 12 months in all of Sri Lanka. The husband is one of them.
What's the chance of them being released alive?
Only about 1% have been released, 1%. But I can't tell it to her because she's hoping that she will come back again. Even I too hope. These abductions, disappearances and extortions, extralegal killings have become the way of life in this country right now. We have records of the persons who have gone missing and addresses, places of incidents and ID cards and police complaint numbers, everything is available with us. So you must have noted this city is netted with many checkpoints. None of these checkpoints have arrested any abducted vehicles, abductors arrested or abductors released. So what does it mean? You don't need a rocket scientist to understand this. There is a cooperation, a connivance between the men and women, the security forces manning in checkpoints with the abductors.
Who
That's
are
what
the
I say.
abductors?
Pardon?
Who are the abductors?
Abductors are the persons who are supported by the very influential persons in the government, the state. Immediately after this regime came into power, they started doing it. They said this is the way to put down the Tamil rebellion.
They joke in Sri Lanka that government is becoming a family business. Since his election 2 years ago, President Rajapaksa has appointed 3 of his brothers to government. One is the Secretary for Defence. All are Sinhalese nationalists, determined to crush the Tamil Tigers. We went to see the Army Chief of Staff. We wanted to know why so many people were being killed and disappeared in areas under his control.
Commander, has it been decided that there is only a military solution to the problems in Sri Lanka?
Actually, the President has stated that he like to convince the terrorists that their stance of getting solution for their problem by military means is not going to work for them. We want to also convince them that you can never beat us militarily, or you can never get what you want by military means. We are capable of beating them militarily. We have done it in one area in the eastern province, and if still they don't understand, we might have to do it once more, hoping that they will understand that.
How are so many hundreds of people being murdered, being killed and abducted in mysterious circumstances all across the country, in the east, in the north, even here in Colombo?
Yeah, those are the allegations by the interested parties who are trying to sabotage or block the military operations. They have vested interest. They say hundreds are missing, hundreds are murdered. But as far as the complaints are concerned, there are no complaints, formal complaints even entered in the police stations or something like that. There are no witnesses who have come to a police station and give evidence. But as far as we are concerned, we give protection to the civilians, innocent people.
Commander, in areas, say like the east, which is now fully liberated by the army, how is it not possible to stop whoever these mysterious, unidentified gunmen are?
If you are referring to, try to say Karuna's people are doing it or any other paramilitary groups, then it's a problem between LTT and the paramilitary groups. This area is not a normal area. So people getting killed and some people going missing will happen as far as the anti-terrorist operations are continuing.
We had decided to go to the old Tamil capital, Jaffna, in the north. It's a government enclave deep in Tamil Tiger territory. The only way in is on a military-controlled flight. But within minutes of arriving, it became clear the military were determined to control what we saw and who we met. We're in a guest house now. The armoured personnel carrier is waiting outside. There's a soldier right at the door of the guest house. The people who run the inn are afraid. We feel very intimidated. They're telling us we've got to move to an army base, that we cannot be out of the sight of the military at any stage. I don't know what's going to happen next. We were forced to spend that night on a military base and told we'd be returning to Colombo the next day. In the morning, the army agreed to give us a swift guided tour before we left. Every day, someone is killed or disappeared in Jaffna.
It seems pretty certain that the LTTE, the Tamil Tigers, are responsible for some of the killings, some of the abductions, but certainly accusations are being made every day against the army, against the police. But we cannot investigate that. We were supposed to be here for 4 days. Instead, we have an hour and a half.
This seaside city is ringed by checkpoints.
I just heard a shell explode. The front line is really only a few miles away from here, though for security's sake we're not allowed to go down there. But every day the Tamil Tigers and the security forces are pounding at each other, just like that, with shells.
Despite the ring of steel, in the last year hundreds of people have disappeared.
We had asked for permission and apparently been granted to go to this nearby island of Kites. We wanted to investigate the abduction of a Catholic priest who was investigating human rights violations supposedly carried out by the military, by the security forces. He'd been going around taking photographs of these abuses and then he disappeared. That was about a year ago, but we're not going to get anywhere close to his church or to meet any of the people who knew him.
Next stop on the Army's tour of Jaffna, the hospital.
This hospital is chock-a-block with victims of violence from both sides. Our intention was to come to this hospital and speak to the victims from both sides. That's not going to be possible today. We have to do what we're told. Yes. We've been taken to the intensive care unit. Oh, look at this. There are a load of soldiers in here after us. I asked them not to do this.
The only person the army wanted us to see was an alleged Tamil Tiger. They said he'd lost an arm while planting a mine. We had half an hour left. We asked to be taken to the government-run Human Rights Commission. It's where people come as a last resort when they're threatened by the death squads.
This is the Human Rights Commission. This is where the people are coming to surrender themselves. What that means is when they come to this commission, for their own safety, they're put in prison. So things are obviously seriously bad if you're willing to go to prison. Good morning. Have many of you come to surrender?
Yes, we want to get the help from them.
Everybody here wants help from them?
Yes.
All the women and the men?
Yes.
Everyone here?
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. How are you? We just wanted to ask you what was happening here.
The director asked us to stop filming. He was worried our pictures would endanger the families asking for help.
It's men, women and children who are coming here to hand themselves over to protective custody. They're doing it because they've received death threats issued by persons unknown, according to the director of the centre here. If the people do know who's threatening them, they don't like to say. But one thing is for sure, they have to be very scared to put themselves in that position where families get split up and have to live in prisons.
The army took us to the airport. In the 24 hours we were in Jaffna, 4 people were killed by unknown attackers. That's the news the government didn't want you to hear. Our tour of Jaffna was over, but it confirmed what we'd seen elsewhere, that in the battle to overcome the violence of the Tamil Tigers, the government seems to be forsaking the rule of law.
Tomorrow, Ian Hislop begins a new series tracing some of the descendants of the men listed on Britain's war memorials. Not Forgotten is at 8. Next on 4 though, A Place in the Sun, Home or Away.